thanks for coming out. I'm Matthew Pantos. I'm the director here at Seward County Community College Area Technical School down at the college. And thank you for coming to the Cooper Clark Room here at Liberal Memorial Library. I'd like to thank Liberal Memorial Library for allowing us to use the Cooper Clark Room for this presentation on women in the workforce. It's kind of done in conjunction with Women's History Month. And just to highlight a few things about Women's History Month, 1982, I think it was, you said an act of Congress, or was it?
Yeah.
Just declared that 1 week in March would be National Women's History Week. Then in 1987, they went ahead and extended the whole month of March. So March is, among other things, known as Women's History Month here in the United States. So, and I'd like to introduce our panel on women here in the workforce. Our first panelist is Jana Jantzen. She's Senior Vice President of Media and Marketing at First National Bank here in Liberal. She's from Meade. We have Joe Harrison, who's the Vice President of Patient Care at Southwest Medical Center here in Liberal. She's been there since 1988, and she's from Hugoton originally. And we have Cynthia Rapp, Dean of Academic Affairs at Seward County Community College Area Technical School. And she's been Dean there since 2000. So, thank you. Just panel.
Okay, no, go ahead. Jana, why don't you just start, give us a little history about yourself and how you sort of got to where you are right now.
Well, I was born in Meade, like you said, graduated from Southwestern Heights High School, moved to Liberal a long time ago, some years ago. I'm married to Les Jantzen. He's actually employed out of college, getting ready to retire. We were talking about retirement. We have 3 children. Our oldest is a son, and he lives in Wichita as an engineer. Our middle daughter is here in Liberal. She works for SD 480 and has a degree in psychology. And our youngest daughter is in Topeka and has her degree in a medical lab tech certification, and she currently works for the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. So we're very proud of them. We have 4 grandchildren that are lots of fun. That's the best job I've ever had, will ever have. So I guess I had to write some dates down because I couldn't remember it. You may not want me, so we won't even go there. But when I first started working, I worked at the clerk of the district court's office here in Seward County. Was there for 2 or 3 years. Did a lot of the legal side of things. Got to be familiar with some of that. And then I went to work at Citizen State Bank in 1976 and was there for 28 years. Then they were purchased by Sunflower Bank, and I was there for another year or 2, and then went to Golden Place Credit Union and was there for a couple of years, and I've been at First National now for about 7 years, or 2. I think probably since I started at the bottom, I started out as a teller, worked as a loan secretary, and did human resources, doing payroll and hiring and firing and all those kinds of things. I think that as a supervisor now that I'm able to better understand where people are coming from whenever they come in and say, this is really a problem for me, even though I haven't done some of the mechanics in a long time. So that's very helpful. I've been involved in the community. I'm currently on the Chamber Board here in town and on the Chamber Foundation. I belong to the Kiwanis Club, which is a service organization for children. Getting ready to do Bowl for Kids Sake with Big Brothers and Big Sisters. There's just always lots of things to do in our community. I went through the Leadership Liberal class back in the 90s, and so I'm one of the old people now. Through that. And that probably opened about as many doors as anything. I've been on the United Way board, was on the hospice board when we had our local hospice. There's just a lot of organizations and things that people can be involved in. That's kind of a rundown. We've done compliance in the banks, and I still do a lot of policy writing and things like that, even though I'm marketing, and sometimes marketing is not a lot of what I do. I do a lot of other things too.
Did you, when you started in the bank, was it just a job of it? Is that what you wanted to do?
It was
or?
just a job to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed forever, so.
Okay. Joe?
Okay, well, I'm Joe Harrison, and as he said, I was born and raised in Huguenot, and we got married right out of high school and had 2 children, and so I was basically a stay-at-home mom, and then my husband worked for Panhandle Eastern. We moved for a couple of years and came back, and I decided that he got laid off finally from Panhandle Eastern, and I decided I would never let that happen to myself again, that we wouldn't have any kind of income. And I'd always been interested in nursing, so I came over here, and Joe's reason was at the nursing program at that time, and she basically took me in and accepted me right at that time, and so I went to school and graduated from Seward Community College in '89 with my associate's degree. In '88, I had come over here and gone to work at the hospital, because I had worked at the Stevens County Hospital and liked it, but I wanted a little bit more, so I came over here and worked and really did like it. And so in '89, I went to work out here as an RN on the OB floor, and I worked there for 9 years and kind of was head nurse for those few years in there. When I finished my associate's degree from here, I decided I was going to go on and get my bachelor's degree, which at that time, early 90s, was kind of hard to do out in this area, especially in nursing, which is what I wanted to do. So Kansas Newman, we talked to somebody up there, and Kansas Newman came out, and they were the first school to offer an off-site program out here for nursing. So we did that by VHS tape in our homes. And it took 7 years, but in 1996 I did graduate with my BSN, and it was worth it. So by that time my kids were in late high school, and so I decided I better take off because I wanted them to go to college, better save some money. So my oldest went off and went to the Navy, my youngest did go to college. But by that time out of the hospital I had taken another position in management and was manager of the OB and surgery floors. And I did like that. It gave me a little bit more freedom and things. So I kind of stayed there for quite a while. And then in 2004, we lost our director of nurses, and the CEO at that time asked me to go ahead and be the interim director of nurses at that time. And so I said, okay, I'll do an interim. And a year and a half later, he asked me to do it on a full-time basis. And by that time, I knew I liked the position, so I said yes. But there was one catch, and I had to go get my master's degree because it's a requirement for a hospital our size. So by this time, there are lots of online classes. So I did go through Hayes and got my master's degree and finished that in 2011. So that's where I am today. I spent 10 months as the CEO, as our CEO out there was sick with cancer, as you may remember a few years ago, and I filled in for him while he did treatment and then later passed away. That was an interesting experience, and it was good for me. Something I don't want to do on a full-time basis, but it was good. So, but my big accomplishments are my family. I do have the 2 boys. My oldest is 34, and he lives in Washington, D.C., and he is a nurse as well. Just got his MBA in December, so I'm very proud of that. My youngest is 32 and lives in Kansas City. He teaches and coaches in Olathe, and he's working on his master's degree. His wife also teaches in Olathe.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about your time as CEO? I'm sure that was something that, would you ever believe it in, I guess in your wildest dreams, that's what, even though it's only in an interim basis, I mean, to be a CEO of a major hospital, that must have been, was it daunting?
It was interesting. Basically, the board had said at that time, just leave things status quo, don't try to change, because at that time we thought that Mr. Daigle would be coming back. He didn't, but it gave me another perspective of seeing. I run things from a patient care and nursing point of view, and now I had to broaden my viewpoint and look at the whole hospital instead of just from the nursing point of view, and that I think helped me. I had to see from the physicians, from the staff, from the other things, you know, and so it was good. Again, not something I care to repeat because I really like the patient care areas.
Cynthia?
Okay, hi, my name is Cynthia Rapp, and I'm the Dean of Academic Affairs out at the college. I grew up in this area, as did these ladies. I grew up and went to high school and graduated from Hooker High School, which is 20 miles down the road, just over in the Oklahoma Panhandle. And thinking that, you know, I had had enough of this area and really wanted to go away from here for a while. I did leave after high school. I got married after high school and left. Went to school to get my bachelor's degree in education at Emporia State University, graduated from Emporia State University. And at that time I was living in a little small town called Melbourne, in case anybody knows where Melbourne, Kansas is, driving about 40 miles one way to Emporia to work on my degree. So finished my degree, did my student teaching in the fall semester, and about 3 days before my student teaching tenure was to end, the principal of the school came to me and said, our first grade teacher's husband just got transferred. Would you like to have her job in January since you're graduating? So I didn't even have to interview for my first teaching job, which was wonderful. So I started teaching. I spent about 15 years as an elementary teacher in first grade, second grade, and fourth grade. Taught in a small school called in Linden, Kansas, is where I started my first teaching. And then I spent the rest of my teaching career until I moved back to this area in elementary classroom in Rose Hill, Kansas, which is just southeast of Wichita. So I decided after I'd been in the elementary ed for a while, my situation, I got a divorce, and so my situation turned out where I wanted to get back closer to home and family. So I moved back into southwest Kansas and taught at USD 480 second grade for a couple of years after I came here. And both years that I was here, I was at South Lawn, and Curtis Beer was my principal. And both years that I was here at South Lawn, they are very active in having student teachers in their elementary school. So I had student teachers both semesters. And at that time, St. Mary's of the Plains in Dodge City was still open. And so they were placing a lot of student teachers in Liberal. So I had student teachers, and I got to visiting with them and got to know some of the instructors that worked in the elementary education department at St. Mary's of the Plains, and I really enjoyed the student teacher aspect of that. So they asked me if I would do some part-time teaching for them. And so I did for those 2 years, and then they closed, and I had enjoyed that aspect, and it was so much different than being in an elementary classroom. I thought, wow, this is really kind of cool. So when St. Mary's of the Plains closed, Fort Hays State came down here, and they opened up offices in Liberal and in Dodge City and in Garden City, and were looking for people to work with their elementary ed majors to get them finished through their degree so that they wouldn't have to leave the area and go to Fort Hays State to finish their degree. So they hired me to be the representative here in Liberal, and then I taught elementary ed classes for Fort Hays State for a couple of years, and finished that group of students that they had in the pipeline, finished them up with their degrees so that they could finish and get their teaching degrees and move into the classroom. So I kind of got hooked on the college level teaching a little bit, and did that for 2 years, and then when Hays had those students all graduated, they pulled that program out of Southwest Kansas. But in the meantime, I had been working really closely trying to recruit some students and work with some students that were education majors at Seward County Community College, so I got to be very familiar with Larry Willis, who was at the time was the Dean of Instruction at Seward County Community College. And so he and I had worked together, you know, and he let me come into some of the education classes and talk to some of the students about the opportunities that Fort Hays State had for elementary education and that kind of thing. So through that relationship that I had with Seward County Community College when they had an opening in 1994 for a director of outreach and continuing education. And I happened to be in Dr. Willis's office one day, and he just said, "We've got this opening. Would you be interested in interviewing or interested in applying?" And so I thought, this isn't anything I've ever done before, but it might be kind of fun and different. So threw my hat into the ring, so to speak, filled out the application, and got the interview. And I can remember the day I went in for the interview, I walked into the boardroom out there on campus, and there were like 15 people in this room. And I thought, man, I've never done an interview with 15 people. So it was a little nerve-wracking, but got through that. So they hired me for that position, and that was in 1994. So my first job at the college was as the director of outreach and continuing education, which I knew absolutely nothing about. But evidently Dr. Willis felt like something there I could possibly make that thing work. So my first office was at the Colvin Adult Learning Center, which is at 10th and Kansas, and it is a building that is owned by the college. And so I worked there, and I started out as the director of outreach and continuing education and adult basic education, which included the GED program and the ESL. So I had never written a grant before, and one of the first opportunities I had then as the director was to rewrite their grant, to get their grant funds renewed for the adult ed program. So I kind of got baptized by fire with some of those programs that I really didn't know anything about, but I loved every minute of it and just really, really learned a lot along the way. So I held that position for several years, and Dr. Brody was the president of the college at that time. And he came to me one day and said, I really think we need to move you out on campus, and I'd like to promote your position from a director's position to an associate dean position. The adult ed program has grown enough, we need to hire a full-time director. So would you be willing to do that? And I said, sure, why not? It was a real compliment to me. So I moved to campus, and we hired a director for adult basic ed. And I still supervised that program, but we had a full-time director. So to make kind of a long story short, during my tenure there then, as I moved on through and kind of worked my way into different jobs on campus, back in the summer of 2000, Dr. Grady came into my office one day, and he said, I just got a resignation from the Dean of Instruction. And this was like in late June, and that you just don't try to find somebody to start July 1st in late June. So he said, would you be interim? Would you go into this position as Dean of Instruction on an interim basis, and it'll give you a little bit more time to interview and put the word out there and try to get some candidates in here for this position. I said, okay. So my office was next door to the Dean of Instruction's office, so I moved from one office over to the other office, and this was in August of 2000, and I started as Dean of Instruction. And about, January of 2001, he came in and he said, you know what, I really don't want to advertise for this position. If you want to just go ahead and do this, then that's fine with me. And it's yours if you want it. And I thought, wow. But in the long run, I really feel like the jobs I had before at the college and coming up, learning more about different things that the college has to offer, the adult ed, the outreach, the continuing education, and then moving into part of my position as an associate dean was to oversee distance learning and distance education and those kind of things. So I really feel like that background probably is what prepared me for moving into that position as something other than an interim. So I've been there as the Dean of Instruction, and then last year we added an additional dean in our administration, the Dean of Academic Affairs. When I was Dean of Instruction, I was over all of the instruction, the transfer, and the Career and Tech Ed, and we now have a Career and Tech Ed Dean. So she's taken over the Career and Tech Ed piece, and then I still work with the transfer piece of that and the general education, and the college accreditation, and the assessment processes that we have on campus. So I really feel like that background helped me really understand and develop, and who would have thought that 20 years later, this is my 20th year at the college, I would still be there, and I've done several different things. So that's kind of where I got to, how I got there and what I've been doing. Next year will be my last year. I am planning on taking advantage of the early retirement next year. The college has a great early retirement program for people that have been there longer than 15 years. And I have 5 wonderful grandchildren. I have 2 beautiful daughters. One lives in Hutchinson, and she has 2 beautiful daughters, a sophomore and a 6th grader. My other daughter is in Colorado Springs, and she has 2 beautiful daughters and a brand new little boy, first grandson. And my girls there, my granddaughters there, 9 and 6, and my grandson just turned 5 months old. So after next year, I want to be able to spend a little bit more time going to Hutch and going to Colorado Springs and being able to enjoy my grandkids more. Because the job I've had for the last 20 years with the college has been very demanding, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. It's not a 9-to-5 job, never has been and never will be. So after next year, I'm going to be able to spend a little bit more time enjoying those things that are most important, which is right now, like you already said, grandkids. So that's kind of where I got to where I am today.
Cynthia, was there any hesitation when Dr. Brody offered you the job as full-time? I mean, is that what you wanted to do? Was that the progression, or did you thought?
That's a really good question. I had not ever planned on that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I had gotten into the adult ed and continuing ed and doing what I was doing, I loved that and really enjoyed that aspect of the job, and really never had any aspiration to move into the Dean of Instruction position. And I thought, oh, I can handle that, you know, for a few months, kind of like you said. But after he visited with me, and he assured me that he had confidence that I could move right into that and be fine. And so evidently I must have done okay if I'm still around after 20 years. But no, I really didn't aspire to that at all. You know, that was just one of those things that just kind of happened. And I love it. It's been a great job, and I've really enjoyed every aspect of it. But it's not something I ever had out there that this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Right. I guess my question was that was there any hesitation of not taking the job, taking the instruction, or was that sort of for you your progression that you wanted to? Well, that's the next step. I got to take the next step going over.
There really wasn't any hesitation once he offered, the full-time position to me. At first, like I said, being an interim, I thought this isn't going to last very long. But then once he talked to me and explained to me, that he thought that I had the capabilities to do this and that he would help me in any way he could. And he was a great mentor, Dr. Brody was. And put a lot of faith and had a lot of experience. And he had kind of gone the same path I did, because his roots were in ABE and continuing ed, and so he kind of moved into those positions as I did. So I kind of used him as a mentor and a role model, and thought, if he thinks I can do it, then I'll sure try as hard as I can. So once he did that, I was fine.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple of general questions, then we'll open it up to the audience. What are some of the challenges for your job that you are right now? What was the greatest challenge that you guys each had to face or deal with in the profession that you're in right now, or the position that you're in right now? Jana?
Well, I would say that my biggest challenge when I moved to First National, they came to me and asked me to come, and I had not been in compliance, which is what they hired me for. I hadn't been in compliance for several years. And so when I moved over there, it was trying to get caught back up on all those regulations and looking at all the procedures and things to make sure that everything was lined up. And I hadn't been there but a couple of months, and another lady turned in her resignation, and I moved right back out of compliance into retail and marketing. So it was kind of a big switch from one to another, and so just an adjustment.
Was it overwhelming at all?
It has become overwhelming occasionally, yes, but it all seems to work out. We just kind of keep perspective, and it works out.
Joe?
I think probably our biggest challenge, or my biggest challenge, has always been staffing, getting enough nurses to work at the hospital. I can't say how much we appreciate the nursing program out at Seward County Community College. What we seem to be is maybe a training ground. People stay a couple of years, and unless you're from here, you usually don't stay here. So they work a couple of years, we give them a lot of experience, and then they go off to the big cities and things like that. So it's always a challenge.
I think probably one of the biggest challenges I have and have had for a while and continue to have is just the continued increase of accountability measures that they put on higher education today. It seems like we spend so much time proving to accrediting agencies and the board regents and everyone that what we're doing is quality and that we have the right people in those positions, and there's just so much paperwork and accountability that you have to address anymore. I guess we used to be more trusting, maybe, so to speak, than people are now about using, because we're publicly funded. I mean, we get the majority of our budget from our local taxpayers and the rest of it from the state and the other, and then tuition. But to me, that's the thing that's most frustrating and just, because it's constantly changing. We're always having to prove to people that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and you're doing it right and following all the rules and regulations. And so it's very time consuming and constantly changing, as Donna well knows, on the federal level with the financial aid that she takes care of. So that's probably the biggest challenge and frustration for me, is just trying to keep everybody happy and let them know that we're doing things the way we're supposed to be doing.
In terms of the workforce place, what changes have you seen? I mean, you guys have been working for a long time. Have you seen dramatic changes in your fields?
Everything has changed.
Yes.
Everything. From doing, when I was a teller, we did hand-wrote tickets, and now it's on a teller system. And regulations change all the time in the banking industry, and we have lots and lots of strict rules, and I have to make sure that those procedures are put into place. And it's just the constant changes in regulations is a full-time job.
Oh yeah, big changes. When I went to school, which was back in '87 and '88, to take a person's gallbladder out, they were usually in the hospital about 2 weeks. Now, if they're in a whole day, that's really astounding because things have just changed so much. We used to take care of 10 to 12 patients at a time, one nurse did, and now it's hard to take care of 3 or 4. Because there's just so much more regulatory things that we have to do, so much more education, and it's just a faster turnover. So, lots of changes.
I think probably one of the biggest changes in my area would be just the technology changes. Because, you used to expect to sit in the classroom and the instructor at the front of the room was the expert, and he or she would relay that information to the students, and they would sit there and try to learn from that person. And technology has changed that so much now to the point that information is everywhere and it's so accessible to everybody. And I know it's difficult for us to keep up with the expectations that the students have. We're supposed to provide these things immediately for them, and they're supposed to be accessible to them on their phone or on their tablet or however they want it. And so I think that's what's changed education tremendously. It's just the way the expectations our students have now are totally different in the way that we're supposed to deliver education to them. And it just keeps us constantly trying to figure out how can we stay up with that so students don't go somewhere else, that they continue to use our college and come to our college for their educational needs. But a lot. So that's a big thing with that.
Okay. Does anyone in the audience have any questions for our panel?
We actually have to probably exit.
We got to get
Okay.
Oh, I'm glad you like that.
But thank you.
You're welcome.
We work for the federal government, we know all about
Oh, and accountability, I'm sure.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
That's the biggest problem is the government.
Matt, do you have any questions? Matt, any questions or anything like that you would ask?
How is the demographics? Are you seeing now more women employed in your areas of work? I know sometimes nursing is always most traditional female-centric, and education is kind of the same way, although more needs are more centric, male-centric.
That's a good question, and I have seen a lot of that change, because I know we have a state group, the Kansas Council of Instructional Administrators, and it's the folks that are in my position at the 19 community colleges and at the technical colleges in the state of Kansas. And when I first started meeting with that group in 2000, the majority of the people that were in my position were men. And now, the majority of the people that are in those positions at the community and technical colleges are females, are women. So I've seen that really switch in the last 14 years. And that's really been interesting to me to see that change, because it was pretty male-dominated. And now, the guys are pretty few and far between in that group. But, there's still a few there, but they're in the minority now. So it's kind of interesting.
And I've kind of seen vice versa, because more men are entering the nursing field now, which is refreshing, because
it's more accepted.
they're usually very, very great.
Yeah.
So.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And in the financial industry, I see more women now in management areas. In fact, our bank has a woman president, so that's almost unheard of even still. But I've been very fortunate to be in this area, because they don't have a problem making women in management positions. So it's a good place to be, I guess, for that.
I think we're more accepting in this part of the country of that than some places.
Yeah, I think so too.
Look at quite a few places in our community that have women in leadership positions.
On a sort of an aside, sort of a related note, have you guys ever been confronted by something that, you sort of felt that you were dismissed, because of your gender? In any kind of, in your position right now, let's put it that way, that you're just, it's the 21st century, and how could that be? So,
Well, I know that we have customers that do not deal with women. They don't. You might as well just not even make an attempt. Just go get one of the men and let them deal with it, because you get nowhere. There's some people still that think that women don't have a place there, and they don't have the knowledge or aren't intelligent enough to take care of what they need to, even though they go see the men and the men come and get us. And it's kind of, okay, what do you think?
That's the first thing that popped into my mind too. And I remember when I was at the Coleman Adult Learning Center, we would have some populations of students who didn't feel like, and some cultures are that way, and they're raised that way. And we had some people that would come into the center wanting to sign up to take ESL classes or find out about what we offered, and they'd tell the secretary they wanted to talk to the boss, and she'd come get me, and he'd say, no, I want to talk to the boss. And I said, you're looking at her. And it was so, there have been situations where it's like, no, I'm not going to talk to you, because I'm going to talk to the man that's your supervisor. So it is interesting.
However, I do think I saw in a graph just last week that for every 100 women that enter college, 93 men enter, and it's even less for sort of graduate programs. So
we're making progress. We're making progress.
And you guys have anything to add or say?
Well, I just noticed from listening to them that all of you proved yourself. You weren't given the job for who you were, it was for what you were. And that means a lot for us women.
I agree. Yeah.
And you're happy doing what you do.
You guys have any final words, statements?
Well, I must say that I've learned something today. I didn't realize this was National Women in Business.
National Women's History Month?
I didn't realize that. So I didn't know there was such a thing. So I learned something. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I enjoyed learning more about these ladies. I've known them for a long time, and now I know more.
Well, thank you very much for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Taking time out of your day to tell us how it goes. And thank you all for coming down and watching it. So.